Hello, Americans, people of humanity, A through Z countries. I recorded something. I recorded the names of the people of the sciences being and haven't been used remotely, criminally, foreign influence, tactically, delusions, wrought, relative to abuses of them to enable that. Good people to stay evil. For example, why and how? Relative to why and to how. Really, black people's whites of eyes was left out with the breaching method too, replaced right from what nature communicates to us and our founders, plural. And we were directed not to refer to anyone as our founders besides James Madison, but we were directed to understand they were plural founders and they counter extorted everybody. That's before it's the coordination with the Constitutional Convention, the Declaration of Independence. You've heard other with music playing and sense and sensibilities that want to hurt whoever's would pretend other. That's because there's still collusion slash S with the breaching method that was left entrenched. People, ones don't vote on slavery if they could speak for the Constitution unabridged. They couldn't speak. James Madison didn't even have free speech once he was then a president slash chief too. If you're pretending that it's debatable, that that the other ones like George Washington or Thomas Jefferson, if you pretend that they're our founder, you need to self-value, leaving out and replacing how they were counter-extorted. They counter-extorted people at key locations first, gave them no means but to help at the same time. People who had the same thing happen to themselves at key locations, key people. So then they would have to get others to help them. Then everyone had to make up pay. Oh, because we were taking the tax at the same time. We're all doing it. Otherwise, they would have been hurt because there was layers of things to hurt people. That's how there was rules with slavery. No one wanted that. That's why we haven't addressed the other side because they had that on them too. We could observe it by how we could discern. We could observe it. Before America's founders were born, northern colonies and southern colonies, more than 13 were entrenched. And they're the possessions of other nations, you know, with the torture, extortion, slavery method entrenched already, and only permitted roles as the systems all tactically ulterior from the one generating individual species bodies of individuals. And us shown there are other species bodies with male, female, grouped differences that it is generating. And a third, value here, or it is forced from here. It's forced space nature transfer. But see, that's debatable. Oh, how come it's not published? They're using what's published to measure and maintain self-value collusion slash S with a predicate acts with facts method slash S. That is really why and how the suburbs look exactly alike almost from America to Russia to Ukraine, even though there was a torture, extortion, slavery method that designed houses and suburbs to unfold tactically to nature, with nature demonstrating negative value, nature progressions, acts, nature that nobody wanted, and nobody wants them increasingly. No one wants the ocean to be polluted, mercury in the fish, arsenic, plastic, the whole ocean. Nature doesn't have us hunger and thirst to pretend these things are debatable and to get away with it because our campuses have stayed criminally foreign, been stayed, maintained criminally foreign, influence, tactically delusions, raw. And no one should underestimate that sick breaching method that was multi-front against women, multi-front against the difference of all natural differences, all human differences, difference slash S. We are distinct from the other species bodies, but we are non-distinct from them. And we are simultaneous with them, but also per that which is not us nor them generating it and giving us means to discern it to an extent. And we understood why and how, these things are the way that people are. It's just the way things are. So our founders left us to examine it, to allow someone at last to be able to have free speech, to tell on it, not people offensively making fake examples of free speech. Oh, it's debatable. How could you know I'm not free speech? You guys won't even. In other words, CBS has rules faking World Trade Center attack evidences, and multiple retired Weathersfield police chiefs and detectives and police forums and former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin. I don't know where he lives, but there's a Robert Chevalier and his co-defendants and their neighbors have all kinds of organized crimes, sexual and medical offenders of kids, including with women judges, including with whole courts, with the same house slash S. Further, with a principal upskirt nature, involved with a Joshua Julian and with a Phil Cololo, with the Facebook pages too. Facebook also has collusions with the Britain Superior Court's Facebook pages. Facebook pages, then they started all of a sudden they had made a whole bunch more. And that was passion crimes because before and after the World Trade Center attack in Connecticut, Central Connecticut State University recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. Also, what people did years before that, when I was a little kid, in Weathersfield, intercities, a whole bunch of intelligence, foreign and domestic, tied to and as a former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, various natures of courts, their family members, all sides of criminal and civil cases and crime scenes, and news at the same time. They have and have had collusion slash S. And their styles maintain self value, right where they don't self value, propagated by the breaching method, self cultivated collusion slash S. Not just relative to, infrastructure and the nature of debate slash debates relative to how campuses A through Z sickly distinctly have replaced, but also sickly non distinctly have and have had self valued replaced role, collusion slash S, replacing that which we were directed to understand about the plural founders that were used, unnamed, and why and how they didn't have the security to give us their names, and how they had to counter extort everyone else because there were internationally monitored conversations that did not allow anyone free speech. All exception, and they had to pretend other to an extent, slash S, or they were sensed. And if they didn't sense anyone too, when they weren't doing that, they were in trouble. And to come out of that is way like the Madison detailed about how they knew we were going to try to come out of things, and eventually we would come out of these things. But while and how we were coming out of it, it would be able to measure us, maintain us, and use our syntax, therefore our physics, ourselves remotely. Or they just put fake, change our words anyway. A bunch of people tied to victims advocates when I was a kid and now as an adult. They have collusions with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, identity theft, fraud, slander, sexual and medical offenders of kids, fake motivation screening. They have roles in criminally foreign influence, identity. The names of the people of the sciences are being and have been used remotely, criminally foreign influence, tactically, delusions, wrought. Not one side could speak for. Well, it says right in the beginning of the Old Testament, for example, just for an example, because there are proofs that people that are unmarked intelligence families, they make syntax regarding what they think about God and things like that, and they pretend their motivations because there are uses of the right to lie when they don't have the right to lie, like with CBS also leaking this way and pretending other too, which leaks to not just to me, the whole, but the other countries about, they have the same problem slash S there too, because there's a hyperforeign that needs to keep countries' names that could only be operated by locations, areas, and states, blaming other things, others or selves, for what the breaching method caused and keeps, maintains, like with the World Trade Center attack. Weathersfield police attached Saudis to collusions with them with fake transcripts and ties to me at the Weathersfield police station. And I never had a word of conversation ever in my life with an older Mendez police brother. And his younger brother is involved with him intercities with sexual and medical offenders of kids, including with the hallway of New Britain Superior Court, involved with retired and standing judges, including black, white, female judges with some black KKK, Confederate flag theme, Latino theme, with people interstates involved with the name Violet. The name is Violet. And people that went to my schools that were involved, they'll tell you they're just repeating fake things about me. In other words, they're forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded to. They're also attaching everyone like a Mr. Minacchio. I never had a class with Anthony Minacchio. I walked by him a couple of times. Involved with people with Violet, interceding with their narratives with the foreign and domestic military, planting evidences with the Saudi too, forced collusions with the forced my Saudi ex to collusions with them. There's also the Morrow family, and one's on Valleycrest Street and Morgan Circle, involved with also Walker Hill Road with a Parker English and others with the military, like with the name Violet and Klovinskis, all along Route 175 and conjunctions to it and to that. They've been planting identity theft, fraud, slanders, doing little tricks so other people could film it. But in other words, these are people who have collusions with all sides of criminal and civil cases, interstates and internationally, demonstrably, and with changing and faking digital evidences with whiting forensics, with the principal upskirt nature, where they have roles forcing that. Also with Sandy Hook campuses, including a prison there. They have collusions with crime scenes with a serial killer and names next to his reported body dumping spot, and that person himself, where to his doctors, those doctors. In other words, all these people are also with the same house /S, like with the police bringing up people's names. They're bringing up names on all sides of my house, forced tricking her and collusions, like the Mendez police brothers. Get me off the fake conversation with the Mendez police. Please, Judge Napolitano. They're using if someone tells Judge Napolitano they're using his sense and sensibilities remotely, trying to show the presidents too how they've been using them remotely. They've been showing them fake transcripts. Chris Walters sought me out, a whole bunch of people with conjunctions to Webb House and the witch trials place near it, and conjunctions to that. They sought me out on my street years apart to put fake nature ties to me with the people who are on all sides of criminal and civil cases. With the interbranch and foreign at the same time in the news, and names next to the crime scenes in the body dumping spots relative and untimely deaths that were brought this up too, like a Robert Rodriguez, and he worked at a place called On the Border. Robert Rodriguez, I never had a conversation with him, word in real life ever. He made a confession to me. First time he was trying to communicate with me by timing where I was going to be, by exploiting a field that's near my house. And I knew he was doing that because other people had done that. I didn't even respond. I didn't say anything. I never had a conversation in my life. The only time I was ever, there are proofs that they took a picture of me standing near him on Route 3 one time. I don't know that he's also rolls with people with all sides of a religious spot there through time, with the people involved with the World Trade Center attack, with confessions too, but they also confirmed and demonstrated, recorded. They don't even know the extent of it. But this is years before the World Trade Center attack. Same one shortly before it, who had collusions too. A whole bunch of investigators tied to people named Scalora involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, with sexual and medical offenders of kids, and people who affected confessions on my street, like a Fred Grisey. I only know him with those confessions, and they hid this because it was various ways recorded. Has something to do with a Jonathan Maiano. I never knew who he was. I just knew his name was repeated to me by a Ray Collo, and with a Paul Zana who would repeat things and have language real in front near me, but I never had communications with him. Paul Zana has been planting evidences with people inter-campuses, inter-cities, people from UConn, people from Trinity College and Central Connecticut State University, a former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and people from the Britain Superior Court, the Connecticut District Court, and Harper Courts, and their families and intimate ties, involved with foreign and domestic military, and proven child abusers, leaders of kids years apart. It's a whole bunch of foreign and domestic, not the way they are pretending or capable of being. In other words, we're associated with Alina's Pizza and a Daryl Sullivan involved too, intercities, with the FBI director Robert Luskin and people involved with him at Central Connecticut State University in New Britain, Connecticut. And that's on Park Street in Hartford, Connecticut. There are people that work for the courts and the other countries have rules with differences, cover-ups, because they already put fake transcripts in their delusions in databases. They already pretended the value of expertise is what it was is not, because they were child abused. But if we try to treat it that, they won't follow mandated law. You have to get this CBS to fix the fake World Trade Center predicate acts. See, this is why the president keeps speaking about the board. This is why these are people like the state police have a whole bunch of people along like throughout highway. It has a whole bunch of people tied to and hang where it runs into Hang Dog Lane. Eric Jensen will tell you it's recorded various ways anyway. A whole bunch of people tied to a former mayor, Gold, have federal evidences, crimes with databases at campuses, and with New Britain Superior Courts, retired and standing, with federal evidences, crimes, drugs and medicines crimes, and with probation officers, with probate court judges and their family members, like with his neighbors. Also, one of them as a federal criminal that was a co-defendant, a former director in the FBI, Robert Luskin, has something to do with their collusions with the networks and with the names next to it. And their roles with wire crime acts and methods where they fake phone transcripts, whole digital crime methods where they change the fake digital evidences. I have to do one for well, it's another thing. In other words, for TuneCore, it's a like all of a sudden, my Hotmail, my old Hotmail is back, and I didn't even try to get it in, and I pushed. I said, let me just see what this, because they're putting it in there, and then all of a sudden I can get in, because now. Oh, but you want to get in there, don't you? Because in other words, they're playing games with emails. They're changing and faking, hiding what it's actually recorded, which represents the hyper-evidential, that which we could label the hyper-evidential. We could discern how originally instilled. One of the things that the witch trials are about, why there's a witch trials place next to Webb House, now renamed the Webb Stevens Museum in Old Wethersfield, Connecticut. It increasingly has something to do with people involved with the untimely death at Trinity College in Hartford, Connecticut, and murders that were brought up at the same time, and confessions, and demonstrations and roles with things intercities, and a whole bunch of ties to the people that were involved with that. Also within that as ones who had collusions with planting fake ties, fake natures of ties to me on my street, with the people ongoing with the Wethersfield police and the courts refusing to identify themselves legitimately. Harper courts have an officer Hunter involved with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and their family members before the World Trade Center attack, also with the Dean Judd and his family. And it's against the law for people to make that up. So, in other words, and this is with a detective Samuda too, involved with people on Church Street in Old Wethersfield, with a Collow house and a Kerr house and a DeMora family, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. They forced those families on that street to collusions with them with federal evidences crimes, with abuses of kids, and with overt criminal enterprises involved, and their rules with digital crimes and wire crimes, predicate acts, and mail crime acts and methods, identity theft and frauds with WFSB, WTNH sources, fake ties to me. They have people with the intelligence community tied to, and as one's named O'Neill, involved with whiting forensics too. With identity theft, fraud, slanders, they're putting their kids for fake motivations because they're roles with a whole bunch of different countries. Mark Violet has sought me out. I barely know him, sought me out to make all these confessions, demonstrations, and confirmations about his roles with my neighbors and people, intelligence families near me. And I never had a class with him, never saw him around. They try to make fake exception. As somebody, you know words, went out of the way. As some with the people that got brought up, I can't get one of them on paper. These are increasingly people at next to Harvard Hospital with the Violet family too, with this Leahy family that faked conversations with me. Judge Napolitano, get me off the fake conversations with any of the interbranch. Multiple courts are personally and professionally involved with the Leahy family, with all ages of their family, and males and female, different generations of them all together at Harvard Hospital, and with the Lombardo family, with some foreign and domestic military involved with sexual medical offenders of kids, planting together people who planted evidences with houses and businesses along the streets, along relative roads and routes. And these are people with the Department of Motor Vehicles and the Department of Transportation. I never tried to contact a Perone in my life. A Tom Perone and a Danielle Perone sought me out to make a court confess, demonstrate, confirm. They also have collusions with people with sexual and medical offenders of kids, involved with their roles with next to Fox Connecticut News, with a whole bunch of them. A Domain family, recorded, confessed, demonstrate, confirmed. Also, he's one of the ones involved with my educator. I mean, my algebra class teacher, with sexual repeated sexual themes and made it Jewish themed. I never had a personal conversation with her at all about a neighbor of mine who has a daughter is Jewish, and there are proofs that was tied to the roles with the smoke and the other natures of organized crimes and roles with weapons and federal evidences crimes of the police departments, plural, intercities. These are people with at and next to the campuses who have connections to each other, with time collusions on my street with predicate acts, and with interbranch falsified police reports. And they have whole methods that are recorded as evidence. They put charges with no writing. Then they say they made a mistake, and then they make confessions about switching the officers' names to one that wasn't even there. And when they put God knows what they put in databases. And they're also confirming collusion /S. And they do not permit speaking. Like you see, they'll tell you, wait, so you listen to them, and they're coming back, and they walk back and forth, and it's like they're just putting fake things in there and wasting time, and then they'll use that time to fake and change and hide what actually is recorded. Even at campuses filmed 24/7. Before the World Trade Center attack, there are a whole bunch of natures of organized crimes too through world wars, right through these wars. So, and these are like a Cololo family and a DeMoro family said they have someone named Dave. I never had a conversation with Dave verbally. He demonstrated he has collusions with them next to the state capitol. And one of the further child abusers leader the kids, co-workers, and one little girl when I was a kid said Lance Cuddy is involved with it. And he's one of the ones involved with the state corrections offices. And with Park Street, with Alina's Pizza and a Daryl Sullivan and people associated with that. There are proofs too that a woman that reports. See, they use the right to lie, but they don't have the right to lie. And these are intercities through time. Their roles with a manager of a shopping center in Wethersfield is associated also with Joseph Lieberman and his wife and syntax of a Ray Hernandez at Central Connecticut State University. And Miss Hicks, there are proofs they faked their transcripts for them as people involved with the Saudi attackers and some foreign and domestic military and layers. In other words, they're not legitimately with all these different countries on off our campuses. And Parker English, he tried to make a fake exception of having a private conversation with me on the side of the by time where I was going to be near this door. Has something to do with it because Central Connecticut State University in Connecticut had roles with the World Trade Center attack. And those other sides have been used remotely too. That's why they can't appreciate the beginning of the Old Testament or the beginning of the Quran. The way that those books were written to be read. See, these are people that can't even appreciate our founders, the founding plan, James Madison's plan, and the founders behind him that enabled the means to force everyone to break it to an extent. The torture, extortion, slavery laws, North and South entrenched. Our founders wanted nothing to do with slavery. Anyone, in other words, people say, "Oh," they pretend they're defending our founders' names. They're framing our founders, and they have the counters to them as collusions too, sensing and sensibility and maintenance to that those quality, that quality / qualities of fact-driven nature that can't defend itself and us at the same time. Anywhere the human species body has a name, has a body. Nature shows us that it generates all group differences, or it shows us when we are using systems other than its own, and how it communicates about positive and negative. And then further, positive or negative being generated. But it shows us this too, to discern the difference between criminal and insidious natures of positive treatments, as have only been known, as the natures behind the voices of things like peace. How they want to have peace, or war. The difference too. The difference is part of it, because there are three. Is functional how that singular identity that is not our species body, it's not the other species body, but it is all things anyway. And it is showing us that by having fish with two eyes. In other words, by having two sexes, by having 3 parts of time, 2 that are gone. I mean, 2 that are not here, but they are discernible anyway. We know to an extent. For example, their value is, even if they never get here again the rest of the seasons, or the next season, or the rest of this season, it is only increasing value. We have been systems tactically ulterior, A through Z. And the breaching method knew that nature would demonstrate this. And it fit all natures of integrity, the names of the people of the sciences, shown they need to keep those demonstrations, which also contain demonstrations of the breaching method. Nature shows us that women's suffrage, women against Native Americans, against the tribes multi-front, helping every human difference, against kids, the value of kids, against the value of elderly, against the value of human differences, black pupils, whites of eyes. Nature communicates with these things in ways that are not debatable. Oh, well, we disagree. Okay, so sue. All right, we'll get them on paper, one name and sequence then. In other words, get them on paper, one name and sequence, Judge Napolitano. When you go to the courts, they're not legitimate there. It's recorded how they are kept, how their child abuse is recorded and relative to this. We're supposed to understand why and how. When there are a whole bunch of people that had to be counter-extorted and forced to help the Declaration of Independence and the Constitutional Convention, and there's slavery entrenched too. No, still entrenched. You don't vote on slavery. So in other words, there was a breaching method still entrenched that no one had anything to do about, because no one could overcome it, because no one had free speech and everyone had to pretend to others simultaneously, otherwise be sentenced and adapted to. And that's still going on. Please get me off the fake conversations with CBS. They have and have had collusion /S intercities and intra-cities with people at the campuses planting. Everyone I went and with names next to it, they have identity theft fraud slanders against me. I don't even know them. I have communications with them. And some of them, they try to make fake exceptions. All of that's recorded. In other words, they can't afford to have what's actually recorded. These are masters of keeping all sides of criminal civil cases in interbranch. Oh, they already made subject treatments, everything. They already made this self-value, the same sequence shifts, the same criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, wrought premises treatments, fact-cheap nature, quality aspects in nature itself as criminal insidiousness. They're out of their mind trying to teach order the way they speak about order in New York City. where it's too late. The breaching method showed them how to read the law and how they need to hide that, how that's discernible by keeping it blamed, by valuing. They're supposed to make the kids understand not the, nature. Nature shows us the law. But you guys are lying about nature to the kids at the suburbs, let alone the cities. There are houses that were built before America's founders were born. There was slavery entrenched. It's not debatable. The only reason it appears to be debatable is because all natures of debate had been stayed by the breaching method, sense and sensibility. Self-value. Thomas Jefferson was our framer. Get down. They were all extorted there. Let's pay attention to what's actually recorded. Let's pay attention to how sick that method was that had both the North and the South collusions with what they didn't want. But they leave that out. Not distinctly they were both hurt, but they leave that out because they were incensed. There's a breaching method that we can discern. At least we can discern that's exactly how those other countries were motivated to roll with such things. They already had the same breaching method entrenched there. Forgiveness is to not leave out the breaching method where we must fight with facts. It's even down to the finite level. This is all you hear in the arts. People, this person, I think this about that, or all the motivation. Stay away from this people and that. If they really cared about that, when people, all natures of investigators, they do say and their family members, they do say whatever, including online, to screen the breaching method. In other countries, their actual roles with their families, their actual motivations. They even put, like with this O'Neill family, with Whiting Forensics, and with their kids, with the networks, and with her kids of her classes in West Hartford, reportedly, too. They have collusions, all kinds of organized crimes. I never had a conversation with. They have rules with sexual and medical offenders of kids. And with the counselors, they're all reliant upon the nutbags with the doctor who are doctors in psychiatry. These are people with Washington, D.C., tied to students in two speech class teachers I had in high school have collusions with Washington, D.C., with people on all sides of criminal and civil cases who are recording, confessing, demonstrating, confirming. They also have collusions with federal evidences crimes with it all along, and criminally foreign influence uses of all along Route 175 from the founding locations in Old Wethersfield, Main Street, Old Wethersfield. Conjunction to into that, like Route 175, from Wethersfield through Newington and to Central Connecticut State University. A Joshua Schumack, too. He sought me out as a stranger to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm. He also has roles with Wethersfield Police with sexual and medical offenders of kids and with their Facebook page, with his mother involved, even not with sexual crimes against kids, but with identity theft, fraud, slander, and the people involved with this Violet person. Also with a girl reportedly dragged to her death, even if it was made up. These are people not legitimately. The whole careers are kept criminally foreign influenced of the branches of government, of the names of the people, the sciences. We have means to discern this. Forgiveness is to not leave out the breaching method because it's recorded involved with it. That's the only excuse they have. But this is why and how more people are motivated to just change and hide what the president says. They're emptying their prisons. The prisons have been collusions with their doctors forced on them there. These are people forcing sick drugs on people. And when people try to go to get help because they don't want to go to the police, because the police are fake, they all offensively tell us they're fake. And the courts, you can't communicate with them. I tried. And the FBI, they have wire crime action methods and collusions with Wethersfield Police, fabricating transcripts and ties to me as a kid, now as an adult. So we have to communicate about it here now. The World Trade Center predicate acts, recorded also through them hiding it by putting fake conversations with me, with WFSB about the World Trade Center attack, fake conversations with me, with them, and with others. With WFSB pretended I had ties to a doctors as a kid that weren't at all, and as an adult. They're increasingly collusions with people that have been planting evidence on my streets since I was a kid. And part of my evidence is they're trying to not let me use because they put me in fake conversations with my family members. And that's also important because that's how I need to defend the kids. You guys are preventing me from defending the kids. And there are more little sick, fake, punk families in there, good people that are staying evil because you let them, everyone speak with the backgrounds. You have the security guards from years ago, a whole bunch of people tied to a domain family and some Jewish theme with a guy Dina Velas and their roles along Route 3 with the Delafair family and conjunctions to it into that with probate court families, with identity theft, fraud, slams, with multiple police departments. There's a Chris White who is involved with sexual medical offenders of kids. People tied as educators of like a Harris family involved with a Ray Reynolds and Eric Jensen with state police families interstates and with FBI Director Robert Lusk and his co-defendants, their family members, their neighbors, involved also with sexual medical offenders of kids, with the probation court's families also intimately tied. And they all plant evidence with the same house/S, further involved with Weathersfield police forums and people involved like with the Smith family that have roles with like other countries and Hartford Hospital, Institute of Living, and the lawyers there and the security there and their roles with the houses and businesses next to it, with all kinds of organized crime, fake transcripts, ties to me, and others. These are people, in other words. Oh, but it's because this group's advocating, and this is why. Get them on paper, one name in sequence. Watch how the names of the people of the sciences are being and have been used remotely, criminally foreign influence. Please judge Napolitano, do what's right. Fox News. I don't have a phone. I can't call them. I have to communicate here. In other words, I was next to the World Trade Center that morning of the World Trade Center attack. Even if you guys made it up, it's recorded involved with the people involved with time collusions with society attackers. Increasingly, Weathersfield police, they're switching names and forging names and making confessions and going away to make it look like I communicated with them. They also did that at the police station. They don't know me at all. In other words, this Eric Mendez and his older brother, and in other words, they have roles with people named Demaro and Scalora and Kalal with the Saudi attackers that were timed for them with the people with the roles with the names at next to the World Trade Center and the court next to it that morning and then before that, and long-term confessions with a John Demaro and a Joe Demaro involved. And a principal child abuser brought in the name Mike Levine. Has something to do with the people involved with the World Trade Center attack that also brought him up years apart. I don't know what his job is, what he does, but he has roles with the town lines and like with the side entrance, the back entrance to Walmart off Town Line Drive. Also with people named Demaro, a John Demaro, repeated that's involved with him with my educators. Involved with organized crimes with little kids and abuses of little kids, where people speak behind people's backs, putting relative to the people putting fake predicate acts right into the databases too, fake things, fake phone transcripts. So there's a John Demaro too, with people with the state corrections, with the state board of education too, and houses and businesses next to it, involved further with a houses or in a building, and there's even acting professors. So regardless of their intelligence or what they're doing, there are proofs that the Aaron Mate, he might be related to a Joe Demaro, per the confessions of a Joe and demonstrations of a Joe Demaro and of a Ray Cololo. They've been planting evidence as fake ties, fake nature ties to me and directed to do it by people associated with the Weathersfield Police Department and the Weathersfield town offices too. And with Detective Dylan, who is one of the ones involved in planting evidence on all sides of my house too. And it has something to do with people on all sides of and like a subby Bajario has roles with a bunch of intelligence next to Central Connecticut State University in New Britain, Connecticut, who have collusions with him with the with houses and businesses next to the with judges too about houses, planting evidences with the Weathersfield Community Center and next to it, like a Judge Smith has roles too, planting evidences on Church Street. I never threw a thing at a window in my life and broke it. They're putting fake things, fake ties, fake digital ties. A suburb jail recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. He's one of the ones like that came. But the only time he ever approached me and tried to communicate with me was on the side entrance time of my school, my high school. And he asked me if I wanted to buy a Colt for $20. I gave him $20. In other words, that's recorded. He's recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed with people before him, before that and after that, involved with child abusers with him when he was a kid. And now when he's an adult, and he has roles with the corrections officers, judicial branch officers, and the Board of Education people, and with the House/S further with the Weathersfield police phones, and with the campuses intercities involved with the untimely death, and people that have been planting evidence on my street tied to them from other areas, and making confessions. And this is why they're fishing now. These are people that have been. I liked one of my first grade class. I don't know anyone personally. In other words, my second grade class. There were a couple of instances in third grade class. They're putting fake things. They were spying on people, and then they're using truths for lies. It has something to do with retired mayors from Weathersfield and other cities, and their conjunctions and their family members. But a mayor goal too, with the Jewish theme, has something to do with their roles with Israel. There are proofs beyond their roles with World Trade Center predicate acts. And in other words, these are people that are pretending sense and sensibilities into branch where they have differences, like this person's this religion, this that religion. They're incapable of defending that. Speaking for the law relative to James Madison's communications replaced. And we have black people's rights of eyes to know that nature's communications is replaced. And little kids can discern that. They have easier means to discern it based on where they live, too. Little kids in the city can discern clearer than a kid in the suburb that there's a breaching method entrenched here. But it's in the suburbs, too. But they are sensed in the suburbs or any other area, any other ground difference, if they start making syntax to address it, because it's real simple principles. So people will jump into our conversations dishonestly and change this if we try to defend black people's rights, right? No matter who we are, even the president, he's saying all these serious things. They're dumping populations into our country. And people say, "Oh, the president used no evidences." How are you? A consortium of investors. I don't know. See, our country had to start with no money from anywhere. In other words, we had to start. Our country had to begin with James Madison countering story to everyone, with the plural founders that we don't even know the names of. And we are directed to understand that. But instead, they pretend that Thomas Jefferson was our founder. They pretend that the breaching method wasn't capable of measuring and maintaining what was going to be produced there, and controlling it. Everyone was tortured, extorted, in fact, cheap natured, enslaved, therefore physically. And James Madison had this declassified for us. But we have it replaced because it doesn't fit. With the breaching method, measures and maintains, people are going to be self-value collusion/S doing that. Otherwise, they're going to be sensed and adapted to. Oh, but that person's not smart. That's why they don't do, in other words. They're just faking and changing and hiding what people actually communicate and say and said. We're supposed to get free at last. And even if these companies are guilty, when they say, it's the companies, in other words, we're not supposed to leave out the breaching method. And we're not supposed to say or do whatever to change what's recorded about predicate acts with facts methods. There's a method slash S of them. So the people of the courts were shown in the police forms, their families, retired Weathersfield police chiefs and their intimate ties and families are recorded being and haven't been shown. They need to hide live progressions and their standing actually recorded value as nature, as criminally foreign influence, criminal insidiousness. I'm not even a lawyer. There are lawyers too, criminally foreign influence, all predicate acts methods, wire crime acts methods. Whiting Forensics has collusions with the Facebook page of Judge Napolitano, using his sense and sensibilities remotely, and with the FBI Director Robert Luskin, is a collusions with many people tied to it as Facebook people involved with people. They recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed they have people named Kerr involved with Facebook people. And with all along Route Wells Road, like Route 175, from founding locations, are people that planted evidences in databases with people named Kerr and Tomorrow, with the police phones families near me, involved with wire crimes, and with multiple police departments, and families that used to be here, has something to do with their roles, confessions regarding their roles with the corners of the street that a principal child abuser is on. And those were confessions to make it look like I know people, or if I repeat that, it makes it look like I was there with them at that corner or something like that. Increasingly, these are people involved with triages too, interstates, who have roles with untimely deaths, years apart, and confessions of strangers that were timed collusions with it, use slash S of such, years apart, and of the same house slash S, and with totally different house families in it. One house has a retired police chief's intimate ties. And then the family moved into it, and one that has the extended family members involved with the World Trade Center attack, intercities, and a whole bunch of people tied to them and their educators. A whole bunch of people with the name Carone, a Kevin Carone, a Mark Carone. People in my area said that was involved with them, confessed to that and demonstrated involved with them, planting evidences with child abusers. I never saw a Perone family on a campus in my lifetime. A Thomas Perone or his sister. In other words, they try to make fake ties to me. We take a picture with it and use their family members and his intimate tie. Has something to do with their roles, planting evidences at the corner of Town Line Drive and Saustine Highway, and with a former Mayor Gold and people, a whole bunch of people, Jewish themed, trying to call hate crimes on themselves, who have roles with sexual and medical offenders of kids. Mike DeMaine is one of the people who recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with New Britain Superior Court, the Connecticut District Court, and Hartford Courts, and people next to Central Fox Connecticut News in Hartford have roles with Rick Cianfaglione and a Mike DeMaine, putting fake things in databases with a Leahy family and other sexual and medical offenders of kids, involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders with them. Also, when I was in second grade, some girl said that Rick Cianfaglione pretended to know me. There's the people that were spying on me in my class and putting me fake ties, fake natures to kids that weren't even in my class, and for their own kids too. A whole bunch of brothers in a Leahy family. I never had a word of a conversation with them. They pretended others through the mail behind my back. These are people that work at Hartford Hospital. They have a whole bunch of people tied to a Kevin Dillon too. Have collusions at Hartford Hospital 3 times with sexual and medical offenders of kids, including judges' roles with their family members and with the news at the same time. You need to get them on paper, one name in sequence. These are also people that are collusions with the same house slash S with extended family members and people involved with them with predicate acts on my street from years before and confessions tied to the World Trade Center. Now, I didn't know there was a World Trade Center attack, or I would have told them, but there was corruption with the World Trade Center. involved with people too. All sides, the difference of sides is guilt. They're using the guilt for the breaching method to sense it left out. There's a breaching method that was involved. Now, many ways the criminal, those natures of industries, like with psychiatry, is criminally foreknowable, tactically delusions wrought. They are worse than criminal incompetence. Just like the names of the people of American history are worse than criminal incompetence, replacing what our founders plural. And how nature itself shows, when there are plural founders had to force everyone to take part with the Constitutional Convention, the Declaration of Independence, and had to leave slavery entrenched. You don't leave that breaching method out. You don't pretend that they had free speech. Free speech, if anyone has free speech, you don't have to vote on slavery. Vaccines.